thing?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. They
excellent.
will tell us otherwise. Ross and Mike are working on it. Uh, Tim and Daniel, all these guys are working on the behind the scenes stuff.
Well, I'm pretty good at blindly going where I'm told to go.
That's the best thing. Yeah,
So how
that's
you
the
doing, man? What's
doing
how are things?
doing really well. Doing really well. Yeah, just enjoying this this masterclass experience here has been really rewarding for us. You
Great.
know, uh, there's Sung there in the chat saying
Hello,
hey.
guys.
Oh, hey, Sung. Hey, Ross. How
We're
you
we're
doing?
just about ready to get started here, and I am just gonna let everybody into the room who is participating um, into this master class.
Max, good to see you. How you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you?
So far, so good. You surviving the application nightmare?
Yeah, I finished all my sample lessons, and I realized that none of these music schools are on Common App, so I have to do all that gathering of information myself.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised about that.
So I recently finished doing that. Like, just I have this Excel document. It's just all in there now. Um, yeah, cruising along.
The thing about Common App stuff is like, at least at least from like a teacher perspective, it's like it works really great if you're like an administrator and putting everything into the like, but I just end up having to send everything twice because I send it into my uh, academic advisory team and they sort of distribute it, but then half of those schools will actually ask for the the rec letter again. It's like super weird, and then you sort of have to fill it out specifically to the school. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I'll never understand. Like somebody's making lots of money, and it's not me.
Well, all right, guys. I hate to interrupt, but I think we should probably get started. I'm gonna be the voice of reason for now, at least, and try to keep us going here. So, everybody ready to go? Should we kick this thing off?
Let's do.
All
Absolutely,
right,
Ross.
all right,
Yeah, so
guys.
I'll kick things off by saying, first of all, a great thank you to Ross and everyone who's making this happen at all.
Oh yeah,
A2s.co has
absolutely.
been just amazing with their hosting of these events. And then I would like to send my heartfelt thanks and greetings to my good friend Matthew Cochran. Dr. Cochran is joining us today as our masterclass teacher, and he is the guitar instructor at the Interlochen Arts School, Arts Center, Art School, Interlochen Arts School, right? School for the Arts. What
The arts.
yeah. So Matthew Cochran has been a longtime collaborator and friend and even mentor to me throughout my career. I can't say enough about the great teaching that he does and he's going to do today. If you haven't looked into it, look into the Interlochen Center for the Arts and their summer music offerings. I really can't stress that enough how great that is for those of you who are out there looking for some summer activities. And Matt does a great job putting that together. So, Dr. Cochran, thanks for being here. Looking forward to your class.
It is my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. So who do we have first?
I believe Max is playing
I
first.
think it's me.
Max, fantastic. What are you playing?
I'm gonna play that Giuliani Grand Overture that we talked about a while back.
You are. Oh, fantastic. Well, let me grab that score real quick. Thank you, Ross, for sending this score. It's like makes life real easy. Max, I'm ready when you are.
Oh, at first, can you hear me? Like, this is all good.
Coming through beautifully. Yep. In fact, I'm going to mute myself so that we just hear you and nothing that I'm writing down or anything like that.
Okay.
Bravo, Max. Really, really well done. How much are you getting through? Let me back up. Um, so I know we were talking about you learning this piece over the summer. So you've done some pretty serious work in a relatively short period of time on it. So how long have you had that piece under your fingers to be able to play through the whole thing?
Like this, um, probably like 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks at best. The whole thing in one sitting, kind of
Great,
like it's like a thought. I think like maybe 2 weeks ago, I think I sat down and was like, I wonder if I could do this.
great. Yeah, that's very impressive, and really, really fine work. And I'll tell you some of the things um, that I like a lot and I appreciate a lot in your preparation of the piece. Um, it it sounds a little bit superficial, but it's not. Um, the fact that you have your numbers or your measures numbered is actually a pretty stinking big deal because that means that you've looked through sections of the piece, you've thought through transitions, you've thought through. Oh, I see. What a surprise! I'm echoing certain sentiments from your teachers. um, uh, I mean, it makes such a big difference in your ability to micro phrase and your ability to sit down for a practice session and just practice one or two separate goals, all that kind of stuff, which I mean, we can hear in your performance of the piece is that you've really done a lot of the work on the, basically sectioning off the piece and then slowly adding larger sections together. So it's really just first rate work. Your sound is great. Your hands are working beautifully. You got a big, powerful sound, nice follow through. Everything's terrific. What I would like to focus on is looking at the piece as a larger expression. So now that you've done all of that beautiful detail work, you know what all your fingerings are going to be. It's there's really just great documentation throughout your editing of this piece that I think is excellent. And so now we need to think of it from the listener's point of view. Um, and how is it that you're going to structure the performance of this piece from the beginning of the piece to the end of the piece so that we get a sense of the drama and we get a sense of the sections and we get a sense of kind of where we are in the piece as a whole. Um, so, uh, how many sections are, I don't know the answer to this. How many sections would you say there are in this piece?
Seven?
Okay. And
There's
have you named them?
not previously, but I could right now. There's the intro page, the
Mm-hmm.
introduction, and then there's the first theme.
Mm-hmm.
Goes up until the arpeggio section. I view that as a different section, also because
Like transition?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Then after that, it
Let me
goes.
your numbers here while we're
Oh,
talking.
yeah, sure.
Let's do this in real time. So we've got an intro, which we're calling measure 1 through what?
The first page, I mean, 13, 15.
Okay, until the Allegro Maestoso. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 1 through 15, and then we start with you're going to call it your first theme.
Yeah.
Okay, call it theme 1.
Theme 1. Well, it's kind of,
That goes from 16 until where would you say?
part of me wants to say 59, but there's also the slur. I'm trying to think about like if the sections that I practiced are different than the sections of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that slur section at about 47 that is almost permanent. But
Right.
because also the slur, that's a part that doesn't come back because when it recapitulates at the end, it's a direct repeat of 16 through 35.
So let's think about let's think about harmony here for a second when we're talking about the structure. So um, we open with what?
A minor.
A minor. You got it. And then when we get to our first theme, what key are we in there?
Um, are we? We're in A. We're in A still. We're in A major.
That's, you're absolutely in A major. And so if we think about the way composers were writing stuff around this period of time, um, a lot of the forms that we're going to get are some kind of variation on what's called sonata allegro form, which you may or may not have come across with some detail. So what you're going to look for is where we really move into a new key. And if we're starting with A, it stands to reason that we're probably going to go to the 5 of A at some point, right? And where would you say that is? And that's as far as we need to go with this discussion, because I mean we could take up the entire lesson with that kind of thing.
Doesn't it? Isn't it kind of in like? Well, really, it's not till like all the way until it kind of does the one measures like around 100. No, like when it.
I could be convinced of that actually. I think the double bar at between 86 and 87 is a pretty compelling moment there because it really feels to me like we're very much in E territory by
Yeah.
then. So maybe even 77 leading it, maybe those arpeggios leading into 77 might be where we'd call it basically another tonal area.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anyway, what I would like you to do as you're moving forward, now I'll back this up with some examples here, is think about the the structure of the piece and how the structure of the piece builds in tension and it builds in drama into your performance so that you're not thinking of, when you play these very confident forte chords, it's not just a confident forte chord that you're playing at measure 18, but rather it's a confident forte chord that you're playing in the context of the section that you're in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I think the next level of this piece lies for you is to think in the larger term, to think about how these sections proceed and what kind of dynamics decisions and phrasing decisions, and most importantly, I think tempo decisions you're going to make to not only contextualize the stuff that you're these sections that you're practicing, but also to contextualize where these sections are for the listener, and so you can delineate the sections. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So now, let's look at a few of these basically seams between the two sections. So, looking at the end of the introduction into the first theme or whatever we're going to call that, there's a lot of really beautiful drama I think built in to that break, and I want to hear how we can best set that up so that the next bit of music makes sense to the listener.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so how about we start? Is a measure like 12 a reasonable place to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, before we start that though, tell me what harmony we are exploring at that section of the in that section of the introduction section.
We're kind of in E there a little bit.
You got it. Bingo. So we're in big fat five chord territory. So that's as dramatic as things get in Giuliani's. Well, I mean, we could do some, other kind of fancy 19th century stuff, but that's as far away from our tonic as we're going to get at the moment. So this is a moment of a considerable drama, and we know that it's even more drama because we've got all of this cool chromatic motion that's just about to happen, right?
Mhm.
So it's not enough, I think, at least for me, and I think I know your artistry well enough to assume that it's not going to be enough for you to say, I've arrived at a five chord, therefore this is as much tension as I'm going to put into the piece. I believe that you're going to look at that five chord as just the start of all of the wonderful tension that you can build in the next four measures leading into this gorgeous first theme that Giuliani wrote. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's plan it out. How are you going to do it?
Uh, hmm.
You want to play it?
Yeah.
Take a listen to it. So let's go maybe these last four measures of the introduction and maybe the first four measures of the first theme.
Sure.
That's great. That's fantastic. Um, so wow, yeah, like that is just riddled with drama in there, I think. So how many phrases did you play at the end of the introduction, in your opinion?
I feel like one could say three,
Okay.
but
You want to break them up?
I, I like the sound of them kind of broken up a little bit.
Okay. So play the three phrases. So play the first phrase as you would define it. Good. Now what's happening there?
It's full E right there.
Yep. We're going from like a little E to a bigger E, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, not the biggest amount of drama in the world. We've got like, it's like a mild car chase in an action movie. You know what I mean? Like just a short one, no big deal. Okay, we're starting at a little E. We're going to a bigger E. Now let's.
I'm gonna go.
Okay, now that sounds like an answer to the first phrase,
I agree. It also happens to end on an E.
which also happens to end on an E. That's right. Now, just because we're staying in the same harmony doesn't mean we can't build a bunch of tension in there, though. Huh? So, okay, so we have yadam, badam, badam, yadam, badam, badam. So to me, that feels like we have a little bit of a tension going into the end of that first phrase, and then a little bit of a relaxation of tension going into the next one. So we have a subphrase, subphrase, whole thing becomes a phrase.
Yep.
Okay? Show me how you're going to how you're going to build drama in there and
Uh, maybe. Well, okay. So if we're building tension with the first sub phrase, then maybe it could. I feel like it should crescendo into it up until that E, which is probably the biggest E out of the three.
agreed.
Um,
Hmm.
and then just maybe like I don't know. I feel like these have a little bit too, but if we're going with the idea that it kind of goes down to here, then it like it just calms down until like there.
Makes sense to me. Let's hear how it sounds.
Okay.
What'd you think?
Yeah. I liked the first half. I wasn't so sold on how on the second half.
It's funny. See, I feel exactly the opposite. I feel like,
Really?
yeah, I feel like the first half was just a little too much, and the second half was actually quite. It was sort of Goldilocks, I think.
Huh.
But keep in mind, I'm listening from speakers that are, there's a lot of processing that's happening between what you're playing and what I'm hearing. So, and and I think a more important point to make isn't necessarily how I responded to what you were playing, but rather that you're looking now at the form of the piece and you're starting to allow that yeah, exactly. You're starting to allow that form to inform your musical decisions. You know what I mean? I think there are less right answers when we drill down to this point in your interpretation. Like I could be convinced any number of ways how you're going to phrase that phrase that we were just looking at. But and you could make I think a decision on a Monday that you would change on a Thursday, and that's great. That's why these pieces have lasted as long as they have, and that's what makes them so rich and fascinating. But, categorically, I think what you should be doing is sort of exploring this exercise that we just did, in the context of the entire piece. So, okay, we might have just looked at one phrase, but that phrase, if you compare it to what dynamic you're starting with at the beginning of the introduction and how it's going to affect other musical decisions that you're going to make as you move forward. That's really what we're talking about. So this particular section less important than the concept overall.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would say that if we're gonna organize your thoughts on this, what I would recommend is that you go through the piece um, and give a name to the sections. It doesn't necessarily, to me, it doesn't matter if you're following along with um, some 19th century theorist's definition of the form. What makes I think what is more important is that the what you're calling those bits makes sense to you. You know what I mean? So from that, I actually, and this is a little maybe anal retentive, but I don't know. It makes sense to me. What I would do is kind of rank those sections in terms of drama.
Hmm.
Okay, so that you're from my standpoint, it's basically like storyboarding a movie. You know what I mean? That's all you're doing. This ranking means nothing to anybody but you. You know what I mean? So if you decide that the third section, which you're calling, I don't know, uh, Tim's barn, that is the most dramatic section of this piece, then everything else that you are playing makes sense in the context of this being the height of the drama. And from there, you can kind of go further down in terms of the details that you're exploring. But that's what, and in that sort of, I don't know, like subcategories where all the fun lies, because I mean, I personally don't really have a version of this, like a recorded version of this piece or something like that, that's definitive. You know, I could, I have a bunch of recordings that I really like of this piece, and a bunch of recordings of pieces that are similar to it in other repertoire, like early Beethoven sonatas, I think, or overtures from Rossini operas.
Yeah.
All of those, I think, would inform your decision making in this like sort of lower category of interpretation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Um, hey Ross, I don't. Are we? How are we looking on time?
Yeah, we've got just a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
So maybe try to start wrapping it up.
All right. Thank you. That was very polite. Thank you. Um, uh, yeah. So okay. So I'm just going to run down a couple of notes that I made. I could just as easily send these to you, but I'll just tell you some things.
Sure.
Um, in measure 48 or thereabouts, I'm afraid, Max, I can't remember what the specifics were. I just wrote tempo's a little weird,
Okay.
whatever that means. Um, the note that I have that is the most consistent, and this is from around measure 61 to maybe 70-ish.
Yeah.
And then again at measure 191, those are where you have the arpeggios. And I think that you do well to think about weight and placement on and and commit to one note being kind of a melody note. So a lot of times Giuliani has like the thumb um, pushing the melody forward, and then in like two measures later, all of a sudden it becomes the A finger, the M finger, or something like that. And so at this moment in your preparation of the piece, those two arpeggio patterns are a bit uneven dynamically. And so, what I would like for you to be able to do is to play the arpeggios that begin with your thumb at the same volume as the arpeggios that would begin with, I'm assuming, probably your I or your M
Yeah.
finger.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
That's really stinking hard to do, by the way. And it might require just a little bit of setup, just a hair extra time before you transition from a PIM arpeggio to an MIP arpeggio. Just a hair of extra time, and then you can kind of like make sure that you're probably going to need to prepare that note with your M finger the first time you play through that arpeggio, and a little bit of silence there, a little breath, no big deal.
Mhm.
Um, I have a number of places where I said the transitions were really beautiful. I would say, as a general rule, you can probably take a little bit more time or think a little bit more about how you want to phrase the transition from one section to the other section. I think you have a lot more freedom than you're affording yourself there, and I would explore those little transitional moments because I think they're the coolest bits of the piece. Um, and right, and then of course I also made a bunch of notes about uh, Beethoven sonatas and people who interpret them well. I know you're fairly sophisticated in your listening, but I'm just going to throw two names at you just in case. Um, I uh, I love Alfred Brendel performing early Beethoven. Um, actually, just listen to Alfred Brendel.
Okay.
He's amazing. He's incredible in his. I think the other guy that Malcolm Bilson gets thrown around a lot. I think Malcolm Bilson's forte piano stuff is, well, it's awesome. And with that, I'm afraid we are gonna have to stop. But boy, is it great to hear you play again.
Thank you.
Congrats, Max. Terrific work.
Well, bravo, Max. Way to go. Nice job. Well played. Excellent. And let's go ahead and move on. I think, Nathan, we have you up next. Are you ready to go over there?
Yeah, I'm just getting into
Unmuting.
it real quick.
All right, we can hear you. Just go ahead and turn your video on whenever you can.
Hey, Nathan. What piece are we looking at, Nathan?
Napoleon Coast, Opus
Oh,
38, number 13.
awesome. Oh man, I love these. I love these etudes so much. Um, Great. How long have you been playing this piece?
Um, Probably about 2 weeks now.
Oh, geez, it's very new, huh? Great, great, great. Well, let's just jump in. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Sorry, my dog's got a chew toy. As he go somewhere.
It's great.
All right. Gonna put it where she can't get it. All right.
Hold on a minute.
Sorry, I was muted. I was saying bravo, bravo. Um,
The dog's gone now.
okay, okay.
I'm really
Great,
sorry.
Nathaniel. That's the most entertaining moment of the whole festival. That's fantastic. That wins it.
It
Great.
reminds me how much I want my own chew toy. Yeah.
I'm really sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. So, do you prefer Nathaniel or Nathan or what?
Nathaniel.
Okay, Nathaniel. Okay, very good. Good. I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions about your background, if you don't mind, and we can dig in to the coast. So, you told me you've been working on this for 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe
Wow.
3. I'm not sure.
That's very, very good work for a short period of time. And where are you based, and who are you working with, and what's your background?
I'm at Manual with Mr. Kagan.
Great. Oh, lovely. Okay, great, great, great. And this is what year for you?
Um, 3rd year.
Third year. Okay, wonderful. Well, you're playing beautifully. Your hands look great. Your sound is wonderful. The piece is lovely. Um, can I can we just start the piece again? Would you mind?
Okay.
And if it's possible for you to back up just a smidge, I just kind of want to see. I'm looking at your forearm. I just want to see where that lands on the guitar for now.
Okay.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, Nathaniel, that you're doing a thing with your wrist where it's kind of pulling up just a little bit. And I'm wondering why. That might have something to do with the way your nails are shaped. It might have something to do with your follow through. I'm not real sure. Can I can I see your nails real close to the screen here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good and short. Shouldn't be any problems there. Let me see a thumb.
I Thumbnail isn't great, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Okay, good. So I mean, like there's I think you should any little adjustments that we might make in the next few minutes, I don't think are going to affect your sound in a huge way.
okay.
I only have a slight concern um, about, and I'm going to get a little bit farther away from my mic just so that you can sort of hear my or see my hand. But when we do this, we do kind of put a little bit of stress on our wrist and also weirdly on our shoulder. And
Okay.
so I think just a little bit of work in front of a mirror, and and in fact you solved the problem really quickly actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's like it sort of pitches your thumb a little bit over your fingers a bit more. And
Okay.
basically it's just like the point of reference here is that we want a straight line between your elbow and this middle joint. So if you can see that in a mirror, um,
Mhm.
you, you should be able to play the guitar at least your right hand, should be able to play the guitar without any kind of limitations
Hmm.
um, for a long period of time. Good. And then that also should allow you to really move through those strings very freely and be able to move all the way up into your palm if you so choose. How does that feel?
Feels a little bit more comfortable, I'd say.
Oh, well, I'm happy to hear that. No, normally when I ask for these types of changes, the response is like it feels really weird.
I mean, it feels a bit different, and of course, my hand is trying to move back to where it was. But
Yeah, it will.
if
Yeah,
I just practice doing this, I'll make it a habit.
it's great. And you know, I think the way to, it's everything that gets said in a master class or a lesson context. It's like it's one thing to sort of say, okay, yeah, I'll incorporate that, but it's another thing to actually have a plan to incorporate that. So I would say uh, get yourself a full length mirror, something cheap because they always break, and just like watch yourself at least half of the time that you're practicing
Okay.
um, in a day. I think you should. Uh, I think you'd be. I think that would make a big difference. And though I can't really hear it, I bet you're going to be able to get just an even fuller sound than what you're currently getting because it allows you a little bit more follow through. I
That
mean, it's a
makes sense.
pretty subtle difference, but it's still there.
Mhm.
So uh, just for our purposes, let's take one more go at the. Well, you know what? Let's move a little bit further down so that we're not constantly referring to the first couple of measures of the piece. How about the last two measures of this piece, Nathaniel? Can you play those? And what I
Starting
want to
from
hear,
the F sharp here, or wait,
um,
just the C major.
yeah,
Whoops.
the C major, and then the C with G in the bass. Um, we're just looking at those at those chords, and what I want is for you to almost do a follow through that's broad enough that it's almost silly that you just like contact the palm of your hand with your fingers when
Okay.
you're playing those chords.
That's an F C sus 4.
I got to tell you, I love that. I,
Mhm.
I I think that's great. Now, what we're obviously it's hard to control because
Yeah, and there was a bit of flam on some of them, but
Mhm. Yeah, and that's natural. I mean, we're moving your hand around, it's first attempts. Now,
Mhm.
the other thing that you're going to do is you're going to think a lot about these tip joints,
Mhm.
and it's like we're counterbalancing this big follow through with a little bit of almost floppiness in your tip joint. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there are a few reasons we're doing this, but for now, let's just deal with the sort of physicality of it. So I want you to kind of press into the strings just a bit right now. You don't have to make any sound, and just kind of get used to this kind of give
Hmm.
tip joints, especially with your middle finger because it's so much longer than the other fingers. It's going to need more give than the other ones. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah. How does that feel?
Feels a bit feels a bit odd.
Yeah, yeah. The hand is a bit odd. Yeah, because I mean, everything that you're touching is it's on the same angle, but your
Mhm.
fingers aren't the same angle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We have to do all of this weird um, manipulation to our hand to be able to play this wacky instrument that we love so much. Okay, so now you got that kind of floppiness. We're going to add that floppiness to a big full follow through. Don't worry if it doesn't sound the way you want it to. We'll work on that. Let's do a C chord or something. Oh, please keep going. I'm sorry, Nathaniel. I was listening. Gosh, I just really like that sound a lot. How does that sound on your end?
It sounds a bit better than how it did before. I
I'm
think
glad to see that.
I guess having the fingers give a little bit makes them bounce back a bit faster through the string. So
Nicely
it
said. Yeah, yeah. Now the thing that we're gonna take a peek at is what kind of control can you generate with a fuller follow through and more give to your tip to the tips of your fingers. So now
Mhm.
it sounds to me like you're playing a very confident mezzo forte, which you probably want at the end of the piece.
Mhm.
But let's see if we can go down to maybe a mezzo piano.
Okay.
That was that was rather brilliantly done, Nathaniel. That's usually the hardest thing. Okay, now if you can do that, then you can do the next thing. So now, if we're gonna have control over these dynamics with a change in the wrist and floppy change in the wrist, fuller follow through, floppy fingertips, give in the fingertips. We'll say give in the fingertips. Now, what we want to do is choose our A finger as the one that gets more volume than the other notes. So the way to do that is actually, again, we're going to press in to the strings, but I want you to press your A finger in and then press your other fingers in. So there's a little bit of a process here. So you're in your position. It's beautiful. Now you're going to press your A finger in, so there should be a bit of a give to that second string. Now, your index and your middle finger are also pushing in, but less weight, and you're going to follow through. And we should hear that second string come out really beautifully over the other ones. Everything I ask you to do, you're able to do it. It's amazing. Can you hear it on your end?
Yeah, that's something
So,
I've struggled with, making one finger, one voice pop out over the others. So that's
oh,
really
it's
helpful.
super hard. It's super, especially when we're dealing with block chords. And of course, this piece is like perfect to start working on that challenge that we all kind of struggle with.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the first, we'll call it solution to this problem area, is to identify what notes you want to hear in a chord. You know what I mean? That like
Mhm.
you're presenting yourself with a musical goal, and then we're generating some technical exercises in order to achieve it. What's nice is we're doing it with a really gorgeous piece, so why not? Now we can return to any part of this piece that uses block chords, and I would include obviously the first couple measures of this. I would also include where we have those three note chords that are super cool that starting around measure 27.
Like the
Um,
A harmonic minor.
yeah, actually, let's go ahead and explore that because it's a really cool section of the piece, and and we can take this sort of weighted finger stuff that we're talking about and apply it in that context. So, Nathaniel, what would you like to be the loudest note as you're playing those three note chords in 27 to let's say 33?
The middle voice. So the that bit.
I like that. Can you actually can you play that as a melody, just a single line?
Sorry.
Pretty good. Pretty good. In my own practice, I spend a lot of time separating voices out of, especially if I'm doing like block chord stuff. Um, I really like to hear it in my head. And then I find if I can hear it in my head, it's a little bit easier to process it with my fingers.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that section was really difficult for me to learn because it's sort of winding up and down the scale, and it was hard to remember, just where to go, what fingers to put down.
yep,
It was just difficult to memorize that specific section for me.
yep, totally. Yeah, yeah, it would be. Plus, my gosh, with having worked on this for only a couple of weeks and memorizing it, I think that's a pretty big accomplishment. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of generate a little bit of a hierarchy in those three notes.
Hmm.
Um, or rather, you've already done that, right? Like you've already decided you really want that note. So what finger is playing that note?
Um, I and M. Well, I when it's on the third string, M when it's on the second.
Interesting. So you're doing a little. So you're going to play I, and then M, 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 a whole bunch of M, and then
Well, it's three I's because for that B, I play it up here. I play it up here.
oh, I see. Oh, I see. Interesting. I've never tried this. I don't know if it's a silly idea, but um, if I were going to explore this piece, I might avoid exchanging my index finger with my middle finger as we're moving through this chord. If I really wanted to hear that middle voice as the melody, I might actually just move up the fretboard. Um, I don't know if that'll work or not. Nah, I don't know. I don't know if it's the best
That's
idea.
some weird sections.
Um, I think you probably do have to handle the exchange between your index finger and your middle finger handling that melody. So, if that's the case, and you're committed to that, then I think you need to practice those notes individually. So get a good follow through with your index finger on those notes, and then really practice going back and forth between your index finger and your middle finger for the notes that you're actually going to exchange. So it looks like probably 20 between beat 3 of 27 and beat 1 of 28, you're going to have to manage the exchange, correct?
Um, yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's play that through a couple of times, just I and M, and get the phrase just totally the way you want it. Let's go measure 27 to the downbeat of 29. That's probably enough for us at the moment.
Okay. Can't remember which is 27. Just where it starts. Okay.
Okay. Let's try and get that as even as you possibly can and just kind of follow the line
Hmm.
dynamically. So you have yada bum ba ba bum yada da da. Pretty good. Pretty good. Now, as you're practicing that, you'll want to smooth it out just a little bit. But of course, this,
Yeah.
everything we're talking about is just kind of like, here's an idea, and of course, you're going to practice it on your own. Great. Now let's add one more voice into the mix. So let's add the bottom voice. So you're going to play thumb and index, thumb and index, thumb and index, and then thumb and middle, thumb and middle, thumb and middle.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very nice. Do that. Do that much again. Do that much. Okay, that's great, Nathaniel. Now, if you look back at the recording of this class, you'll notice that as you're concentrating on more specific musical stuff,
Mhm.
your wrist does have a tendency
Does
to sort of
yeah.
move up this way. And that's really valuable to look at that, by the way. I mean, I think it would help to kind of look, it's hard to look at yourself objectively, but we have all of these mechanisms to look at ourselves objectively. Like we have, the ability to record ourselves on every screen we own, etc. So that would be really good for you to do. Okay. So now that you've got that, I could definitely hear the middle voice louder than your thumb. And so that's exactly our goal. Now let's add the. Are you playing the open E with your A finger?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're gonna. So this is just basically thumb, index, A, and that for a whole bunch of time, and then we're gonna exchange the index finger with our middle finger at some point. So let's go ahead and do it, but let's make sure that we're creating a melody with that inner voice. Good. I kind of lost the melody when you were moving back and forth between the index and middle, which is to be expected. This is exactly the thing that we're practicing. So the trick here is going to be to listen. If you can do this in real time, it's great, but you don't have to. You can actually use, like, something to record yourself with.
Hmm.
But I would really spend a heck of a lot of time focusing very carefully on the exchange between your index finger and your middle finger and making sure that we're getting that melody to come out and be shaped, because this is a really cool little section of the piece. So we have about 5 minutes, and I have a few little items that I would like to sort of say in summation. But before I do that, because I feel like I've kind of yacked at you a lot, Nathaniel, do you have any questions about this piece?
Um, I think most of the piece I have a good idea of what to do with the phrasing, but um, the main theme, I'm not sure where to put it dynamically. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if I should be starting quietly, crescendoing, um, like staying at a pretty consistent volume and dropping down. Um, I'm just not quite sure what to do, and I haven't experimented that much with it. But
Oh man, you are. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. So I'm gonna have to be very careful. um, so again, I would separate that melody out,
mhm.
but not only would I separate it from the rest of the material that you're playing, but I would actually take it away from the guitar entirely.
And
I would
sing it.
I would sing it.
Mhm.
I would sing it or play it on a different instrument like a piano or something like that. Do you sing?
No,
Really?
I'm not a singer at all.
Well, I don't mean
I think my friend Tanner's watching, and he'll be mad at me for saying that, but
oh, why is that?
he tries to get me to sing, but I just don't feel good enough about it to do it.
Oh, well, I wouldn't ask you to do it in a public
Yeah.
situation like this. And in fact, I wouldn't want you to hear 99% of me singing either. 'Cause that's because it's what I'm doing in a practice session like a lot. Um, I I bet that you're every bit a good enough singer to have your singing inform your playing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like yadam bum 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 ba bum ba da dee da dum. There's some serious phrasing happening in there, right?
Hmm.
And I feel very strongly that when we sing those phrases, we internalize those phrases in ways that are just impossible to do if we only ever use our fingers to produce the sound.
Hmm.
We think about things like where we're going to breathe when we're singing. We think about, well, actually, there's a lot that we don't think about when we're singing that can inform us too. Like, we think about dynamics in a contextual way versus, like, I'm going to play this G louder than that F. You never think that when you're singing. It's just such a natural thing, right? So, that's how I would approach uh, making decisions about how you're going to phrase that main theme, which I think you correctly identified as the main theme.
Hmm.
I think singing it is just totally the way to do it. And in your practice, especially when you're working on things like phrasing and dynamics, I think singing should be a major part of what you're doing. I'm afraid, once again, we've run out of time, Nathaniel. But I think you're doing great on this piece. And all I would say is practice in front of a mirror. Look at that wrist. Think a lot about your follow through. Think a lot about what kind of tension or release you want to have in your tip joints. And sing, 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 and listen to yourself singing. You know what I mean? I'm trying to have your fingers be informed by your kind of natural inclinations when you're phrasing things with your voice.
Hmm. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bravo.
Bravo, Nathaniel. Great job. Shane, you're up next, my friend. Are you ready to play?
I think so. Can you guys hear me?
I can
Yeah, we
hear you
can hear you.
great, Shane, but actually, if you all would give me about 2 minutes,
Oh, sure.
I'd love it. Well, maybe not even. I just need to refresh a cup of coffee before we get going, Shane. So, I promise I'll be a much better listener and teacher. If I'm
That's no problem. I'll get some more practice in.
great. I'll see you guys in just a second. Okay.
While you're doing that, Matt, I'm going to talk to them about Opera Brindle.
Often, Grace.
Yeah. Matt, I was just going to mention to those of you who are on this that Dr. Cochran brought up a couple of performers to Max, and it's funny he mentioned the two that he did, because I mentioned to Max, if he looks back to some of his early notes on that, the same two performers along with the third one are pianists that I often recommend. I think it's important for us as guitarists to listen to other musicians of all kinds, and particularly keyboard players have a connection to us that we can learn from, in that they play an instrument that is also capable of polyphonic textures like we are, and when they're playing accompanying patterns and gestures that can often be very similar to ours. But also their instrument has a similarity to ours in that the decay happens very quickly. So phrasing is something they have to be intimately aware of and work with. And when you're looking at repertoire in the classic period, there are especially two, Alfred Brindle and Malcolm Bilson, who are excellent to look at as reference. And then I would also add to that Richard Good is another pianist who's excellent to listen to for those kind of resources. I'll throw out a couple of other names. One is Christian Bezuidenhout, who Matt and I actually went to school with Christian Bezuidenhout.
Sure did.
And that guy is phenomenal in what his career has done and the path it's taken. He's studied quite a bit with Malcolm Bilson. And then I would just to throw out yet another resource in name for classic music is to look up Charles Rosen, not only his playing but also his writings on the classic period. So there you go.
Amen. All right, Shane.
All right, we're good to go.
I think we are good to go. That means that we are working on SOAR.
Yes, sir. Etude.
Wonderful.
Okay. I'll just go ahead and get right into it then.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Oops. Sorry.
All right, Shane. Very good. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Uh, Louisville.
Okay. And how long have you been playing classical guitar?
Since my freshman year, and I'm a senior now.
You're a senior now. Okay, very good. All right. And how long have you owned the Surfcaster that's behind you?
Oh, the jazz master right there.
The Jazzmaster?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also freshman year.
Also freshman year. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And of those two guitars that you play, which one gets more attention?
Uh, Definitely the jazz master back there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, very good. Very good. Wonderful. Okay. Um, the reason I asked that question is because I have a strong suspicion that your best musical experiences are using your ear. Is that fair to assume? Meaning like that you're figuring out guitar parts and stuff like that using your ear and you're sort of placing it on the fretboard, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd say that's the ones that I'm probably the most proud of. Or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, transcription is hard, like really hard, actually, to do. And I think that there's a lot of oh geez, the amount of musical skills that you're developing when you're transcribing a guitar solo. There's just so many things that go into that, you know. Um, so we're gonna move from a thing that I bet you're pretty darn confident at, like, transcribing a guitar solo, to something that might be a little less familiar to you or a little less comfortable for you, which is studying the score that's in front of you. Uh,
Okay.
is it reasonable to assume that that's a little less in your comfort zone than uh, transcribing a guitar solo?
Um, I'd put them about equal. Maybe the score is a bit more intimidating. Yeah.
Tell me more about that. The score is intimidating. Yeah, okay, okay. Tell me more.
Uh, Reading rhythms to me is probably a lot harder than if I could just hear like somebody go like instead of reading that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That definitely has a challenge to me. I'm not too good at reading above the lines. Like it goes up here and it does that B a lot. That I was kind of happy when I saw that that was the highest note it goes to.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Good. Do you like this piece?
Yeah, I listened to it. I thought it sounded kind of like really like cheesy Italian sounding, like really fits right in there.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I gotcha. Okay. Good. I think I've got a pretty good context for things. So I would argue that you have very good rhythm. I would suggest to you that you have a bunch of musical skills that you've already developed that we can start putting into your interpretation of this piece. Because I am a big believer that style means nothing and uh, performance means everything. You know what I mean? I don't care what kind of music you're playing, and I don't know what kind of music I listen to. So long as I'm being moved by it, or so long as the playing of it is um, expressive and interesting, and there's lots of opportunities to be engaged. So there are a few sections where we just need to get a little bit better at reading the directions on the page.
Okay.
In the first place is actually the third full measure. So it would be measure three. Um, and boy, does that measure show up. Boy, it's measure three, but it's also like in a ton of other places on the score.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine that all of those notes are just in in a block. They're just a chord that you're playing. And would you
Okay.
play the chord for me, please? It's that is a very complicated chord you're playing, and I don't think it's as complicated as that. Um, do you know a B7? Can you just like play a B7 chord in the first position?
Uh, I'm not too good with
You almost did it. You almost did it. You put your second finger on the second fret of the fifth
uh,
string.
fifth string.
There you go. Now, the most important thing that you're about to do is take your third finger and put your third finger on the second fret of the third string.
Second finger. Or wait, third finger. Second. Wait. Okay.
There you go. Now stick that first finger down on the first fret of the fourth string. Play that chord. That's the perfect turnaround in any blues progression, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to ask you to keep that chord fingering exactly where it is. Lift your second finger.
Okay.
Cool. Now look at the
Oh, okay.
third measure, and there's a difference between what you're playing or what you were playing and what's on the page, and that fingering is a better representation of what's on the. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I was playing a G sharp. I just, yeah, that's mine.
You got it. You got it. So now, so that changes everything, right? Like that A natural that's in there, it feels better under the hand. It fits beautifully, and it's just those upper four notes from a B7 chord. So all you're doing is you're going back and forth between an E major to a B7 and an E major and a B7. Well, I mean, if you haven't done that on the Jazz Master 100 times, I'd be like amazed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, uh, and as we're looking through this stuff, it's pretty interesting to make a note of the fact that we're just alternating here, right? Like measure one, E major, measure two, E major, measure three, B7. Hmm? Measure four, what do you think it is?
Measure four. It's still that B7. Yeah.
Excellent. That's right. Now measure five, what happens?
It goes back to that E major, but it puts down the high G, and then
You
it
got
slides to the B.
you got it. So we've kind of um, we've kind of taken a look at this score, and we can sort of see that instead of a bunch of individual notes, it actually follows a pretty not only logical progression, but a very familiar one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
consistent.
just going back and forth between a B chord and or excuse me, an E chord and a B7, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So now let's take a listen to let's go maybe measure two, measure three. Let's just do those two arpeggios.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and play them in the context that Sora wrote them. So we have yum boop bep boop bep boom boop bep boop bep boom.
Okay. Okay.
There you go. Excellent. Now you're talking. Good, good, good. Okay, so we're definitely getting somewhere. Now, here's a here's another thing that'll take the sting off of looking at. It's really weird that we make music by looking at black dots on a page. Like the separation between our ears, how we process all that stuff, and then like something that represents sound visually
Yeah.
is super strange. So I like to I like to take away as many barriers as I possibly can for myself as I'm interpreting all this stuff, right?
Okay.
Sora can't help us; he's dead. And so it's we're on our own.
Yeah.
Okay, so write stuff in as much as you possibly humanly can. Every fingering that you want, make a decision. It's yours to make, and write it in your score. If you use an iPad, fantastic. If you're using paper, fine. Whatever. Just make sure that you can edit that score and really edit that score. I mean, I actually, um, I actually make my students write out fingerings for all right hand, all left hand, all bars, everything that needs to be on the page. Um, and they hate it, but you know, it's a good thing to do. And what it ends up doing eventually is it sort of forces us to make more decisions. Because if you change a fingering, you can just write it in, you can change it, and it's yours. You have been empowered to change that fingering for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move forward here. So, there is a D sharp, or rather, there's a D that needs to become a D sharp. And I think it's where that first repeat shows up. So, can you play the pickup to, I believe this would be measure 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This would be the pickup to measure 9.
Okay, yeah, so that'd just be that open B.
Yes, please. Now keep going.
Oh, and it's a D sharp. Okay.
Now stop right. And if we think about this as a chord, we're going from here to here to, right? So we've got, well, that's just a B major, an F sharp. Sorry about my tuning. And then it, it's just a B sus chord, which I just kind of love. You know what I mean? So if we were going to play that like a strumming kind of thing, we'd have. How awesome is that?
Yeah.
All right. So now let's take that, and we know that the most interesting musical part of that is definitely going. Ba-ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-bum. It's like it's cool. I like it. You
Yeah.
know, you can actually if you sing. It's like I have themes. You can actually like kind of sing that line. So you've got dum, bum, ba-ba, da, 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 yeah, it's great. And that's what we're doing here musically speaking. So can you make that happen, but make it happen the way Soar wrote it?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me get on that then. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs upstairs also. Okay.
Great. Great. And stop right there. That's right. So we need to just make sense of the stuff that's on the page. And the only way to make sense of it, I think, is to kind of break it down into more digestible chunks. You know, I it's not a gimmick. I actually do this a lot in my own practice, whether I'm no matter whose music I'm practicing. I like to hear chords and a melody. That's just what makes sense to me. So if I can pick out like where those chords are on the guitar, I can strum, and then if I can pick out the melody, I can sing. And if I can sing the part, play along, then all of a sudden, all of this kind of, I don't know, just intimidating looking stuff on the page ends up just looking like a recipe, a
Okay.
recipe that you
Yeah.
followed a bunch of different times. You know what I mean? Here's how you make pancakes, blah, blah, blah. And I must be
Yeah.
hungry. don't know where that came from, but you get the idea. Okay, so far so good.
Yeah, yeah, it's all good.
Now let's take a look at two rhythms. I've got measure 31 written down. Oh yeah. I see that. Okay, measure 31. Oh my goodness, look at all those dots and those little extra lines and all that junk on there. All right, we need for this to make sense. All right, so
Okay.
how are we going to break it down so it makes sense?
Uh, we could count the notes. It's in 3/8. So,
You're off to a good start.
okay. So that would be there's okay, so it has to be in groups of 3.
Yes, it has to be in groups of three. So we have um, groups of three, and those groups are going to look like. Sorry, I'm going to write this down and then put it so you can see it. That
Okay. Yeah.
three groups of that, right? Okay, so let's go ta 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 ta.
Okay. Do you want me to clap that or play it?
Say it.
Okay, so that's ta 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 ta.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now I know there's a little extra note in there because Soar likes to get fancy, but let's ignore it for now. Okay?
Okay.
Let's just pretend like we've got three groups of that one rhythm. Ta, 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 ta. Now, because the offending stuff is in the melody line, let's forget about the bass line and just focus on the melodic material. So ta,
Okay.
ta, 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 ta. Yeah. Yeah. And let's finish it up because it'd be just a little bit more satisfying to hear that A on the downbeat of 32. Don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, that add a lot.
Okay.
Okay. So that's
Ah, great. And you even threw in the bass line too. One more time. One more time. Ya da 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 da.
okay.
Fantastic. Now what now I want to point out that all it took was your musical instincts plus a little bit of extra directions reading, to turn that very complicated rhythm into something a little bit more digestible. Okay?
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
let's go ahead and deal with that grace note because, it's it's actually kind of cool. So I'd like to have
Yeah. That's
bum,
just an extra.
bum. Now we have something else that's got to be thrown in there, right? Bum ba dum bum biat da dum. I think you could
Okay.
throw something in. Just don't be too precise. Just bum ba dum biat ba dum.
Okay.
We can be more. We can get it in there. Let's see.
So that's okay. So it's a little trill then. Wait.
Almost. It's so you're
So
gonna
is that going? Is that open, hammer on in the D, and then go into the C?
pull off. So you're gonna start with
Oh.
and you're gonna go to a C sharp.
Okay.
Let's just live with that. Oh, you're being real fancy with it. Let's be a little less fancy. So it's just gonna be a pull off from a D natural to a C sharp.
Oh, okay. So you're not playing the note twice. You're just adding in that pull off.
Yeah, you got that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I can. That's the. Oops. Ah.
Go. Now do that like three times in a row.
Okay. I played it twice there, so yep, that's not
That
it.
was perfect. That was perfect.
Great, guys. I just want to jump in here and say we're getting close to time. So just let's just make sure we begin those moments of wrapping up.
Well, then, to wrap up,
Yeah.
Shane, I would say you have really great musical instincts, and you have a lot of musical skills that I think will easily translate to figuring out the directions on the page. Don't be scared of that stuff. Dig right in. You've got all of it. You can figure that out. Sounds really good. Just, like read the directions very closely and you'll get a lot out of it. It's wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it helped a lot, definitely. Yeah,
Great.
it really did.
Glad to hear it.
Great job, Shane, and thanks
Thank
to
you.
everyone who participated in the classes today. Most importantly, thank you to our master teacher, Dr. Matthew Cochran, and his great work, great advice. It's been a pleasure to have you. It's great.
It's been a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are there any final thoughts or questions? Anyone from the class asking any questions here? I did want to follow up on one. There was a really great comment shared in the thread here from Daryl about well, Daryl, I should say, is enjoying your comments about singing, and they are wanting to know about connecting singing to moving the fingers. That getting the fingers to follow is the problem. So, Matt,
Oh,
yeah, do you have any ideas on that, connecting that little gap?
yeah. Um, I mean, actually, I would say that Daryl just identifies that problem beautifully. There is a huge disconnect, I think, between um, the naturalness of singing and the unnaturalness of playing. And the reason we sing is to bridge that gap. That's why we do it. Now, figuring out how to make all of those subtle little things that come so naturally to our voice, um, it just takes a lot of kind of listening back to yourself as you're singing and trying to do an impression of your singing voice with your fingers. And obviously, when we're singing, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening, physically and with our ears and with our brain that we just don't think about at all. We have to think about it when we're playing with our hands because
Mm,
we have two hands that we need to control.
mm,
We need to do all that kind of synapse stuff with our two hands.
yeah,
So there's just no way to turn what we're hearing with our voice into what we're playing with our hands without just kind of objectively listening to our voice and then try and do what is first a bad impression and hopefully with a couple of extra tries a better and better impression.
right. Yeah, it's great advice. Great advice. I just can't stress enough to all of you how wonderful it is to do that. Just that, what Dr. Hockman is suggesting. Sing, sing, sing.
Sings.
Absolutely, it will follow. Well, okay, so we are getting ready to move into another class at 2 o'clock. So we have this little time in between to get the transition going and underway. Thanks again for joining us for this class, and we'll see you guys soon.
Pleasure. We'll see you
Bye.
soon. All
Bye.
right. Bye bye.